Alvarez Technology Group President Luis Alvarez joins us this week to discuss post-endpoint managed services, as well as news from Nerdio, ThreatLocker, and Pax8, plus a special guest interview with D&H Co-President Michael Schwab on current industry conditions and market opportunities. It's ChannelProWeekly number 216, Sibling Rivalry. Hello and welcome to ChannelProWeekly, episode 216. My name is Matt Whitlock, technology editor, online director, and your host for folks like our guest host, the MSPs, the VARs, the IT integrators, the IoT solution providers, and so integrators. I guess I said integrators, but those are a different kind of integrator because they do things a little bit differently. The IT consultants, system builders. If any of this is kind of sounding familiar, then you're in the right place. If you are generally a sous chef at Applebee's, you may not be in the right place, but you might be looking for a new career, and why not start it here? Joining me is my co-host, the guy who makes the trains run here on time on Channel Pro, executive editor Rich Freeman.
Well, thank you very much, Matt. And on the topic of being in the right place, it depends on your point of view. I either am or am not in the right place for this podcast, because we will be talking about Nerdio during this show and the NerdioCon event that I am attending this week in Cancun, Mexico. I mean, that sure sounds like the right place to be. But I've also traveled back into the past, into a bygone era of 9K modem connections or something, apparently, from a network connectivity standpoint. So just hang on, folks. Who knows whether I'm going to be part of this show or not.
So, Richard, the only guy I know that that a company like Nerdio will throw in an event party specifically for your birthday in a foreign country.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure they didn't know. I kept it hidden, I thought, successfully from everyone, and then our good buddy Joel Zadespinner outed me this morning.
They tipped you off, huh? So let's only say happy birthday.
Yes, happy birthday.
What did you do to celebrate? What did you do to celebrate?
Well, I had breakfast with the aforementioned Joel Zadespinner, and mid-breakfast, mid-conversation, the wait staff came over with a little cake, and so we had a little I guess, breakfast cake celebration, which was awesome.
Very good.
And a surprise, and very thoughtful.
Awesome stuff. And for our YouTube viewing audience here, you might notice Rich has got some black bars. We had to turn his HD off because we're kind of bandwidth restricted because he's connected through a phone, but we can see him. It's solid. Hopefully we don't have any issues and we can keep him on with us the whole show. Speaking of the whole show, or almost the whole show, I should say. But joining us for the first part and the last part of this episode of Channel Pro Weekly is an awesome guest host. We've seen him before. He is someone who I have a nice introduction written for, and I'm going to tell you who he is right now. He's the president and CEO of Alvarez Technology Group, technology and service provider that delivers security, IoT, managed information technology solutions, and more. Interesting thing about Alvarez Technology Group is that they embrace IoT solutions pretty early on, pretty much well ahead of most of the IT service industry, and they provide their clients with consultation and pretty cool integration services. We've had some conversations about some of those in the past. I'm sure we'll touch base on those as well. Please welcome Luis Alvarez. Welcome, Luis.
Thank you, Matt. It's always a pleasure to hook up with you guys, whether virtually, which has been the case the last couple of years, or in person. I'm looking forward to getting back out there and attending the Channel Pro events, and getting back to at least some semblance of normalcy. But the pandemic has been a real interesting time for technology, as you guys well know, and many of us have had the opportunity to use that dreaded word pivot to find new opportunities and new things, and we're in that same boat, and so we're riding the wave right now. It's a good time to be in tech services and in IT in general.
Yeah, and it's a good time to start getting out to events, as you said. I hope we can see you at a Channel Pro Network event this year. And what an amazing coincidental segue to turn it over to Rich to plug said event, because we've got one coming up. Rich, tell us about it.
Yeah.
Well, if Rich was able to speak, which he is apparently not at the moment from those bandwidth issues, We have our first event in Newark, New Jersey, March 9th. There's also a pre-day event on the 8th you might want to check out as well, if I remember correctly. But we have got all kinds of good stuff for you to learn about, and I will tell you what they are. Because Rich was prepared to talk about it. I wasn't, so I'm trying to buy myself a little time. Oh my goodness gracious. We've got a jam-packed agenda. We're going to be talking about security. We've got like a security slam kind of thing where we're going to hear some stories from real life cybersecurity experts and some of the things that they've done and some of their experiences. We've got a great peer-to-peer session. We're going to be talking about how to win with Microsoft Azure. So there's a lot. Azure's a big thing. Some of you are using it. I'm sure many of you are not using it to its potential or not leveraging it the way you could to make money. And Luis is nodding his head like there's a lot in Azure.
There's a lot in Azure.
You need to wrap your head around. We're going to be diving into some of those solutions as well. We're going to be talking social media sales strategies. That's going to be a pretty cool one. We're going to play a little game about recruiting. We're going to do it in the style of the dating game. We call it the employment game. So that's going to be a lot of fun because hiring is a big issue right now. And how do you attract and get the right people? Well, you're going to find out in that particular segment. We're going to talk about managed services, doing our own little managed services strategy survival kind of session. It is going to be a jam-packed day of awesome content. And if you are anywhere in the Newark, aka New York metropolitan area, anywhere around there, put it on your calendar for Sunday, March 9th to join us in Newark, New Jersey. And take it. And how can you do that? So a couple things. One, if you want to learn more about the events, go to events.channelpronetwork.com. That's where you'll find all kinds of information about all the events we have this year. If you're interested in Newark specifically, I'm going to put a graphic up on the screen for you. It's got a QR code. Scan that with your phone if you're watching on YouTube, and it will take you right to the registration page to register for Newark, New Jersey event. If you're listening, go to channelproforum.com/Newark. Both whether you go there through the graphic or through that link, use the promo code CPVIP when you register. That will get you in the door for free. You have nothing to lose, everything to gain. There's many prizes and all kinds of fun stuff. You don't want to miss it. And of course, we want to see meet you in person as well. Rich will be there. He won't be in Mexico anymore, but you can kind of give him a belated happy birthday. We can have him blow out some candles or something, and it's going to be great stuff. Rich, you disappeared on us for a moment, but I think, are you back?
Well, I believe I am. Yeah. No, and if you come out to Newark and see the show, I won't even be pixelated.
Yeah, he will be in high definition 3D.
4K. He's going to be in 4K.
4K. Whatever the resolution of the human eyeball is, that's what he's going to be. So you definitely want to come on and check it out. Luis, great to have you on, and thanks for the option there to plug our events. I would love for those who have maybe not caught a past episode where you've been on, take a few minutes, tell us about you and tell us about Luis Alvarez Technology Group.
Sure. So we are a managed security services provider located in the central coast of California, Salinas in particular. If you're familiar with California, we're about 50 miles south of Silicon Valley, but we might as well be, across the country because it's such a different place. So we're mostly a agricultural and hospitality heavy area, but we operate throughout the states. We have clients all over the country, and have enjoyed 21 years this year of being successful in the things that we do. We started as a regular IT consultancy, like a lot of guys out there, Dan in a van, Chuck in a truck, however you want to call it, and have grown to over 25 employees. We'd be a little bit bigger if we could find more employees, but that's a whole other story that we can spend an hour talking about. But now our focus is largely around helping our clients determine their strategic direction. And whether that's cloud, IoT, on-prem, virtual, we have expertise in all those areas. We have a very vibrant security practice that is both cyber and physical security, in particular video surveillance. And that started when the good people of California decided to legalize weed. And back in 2016, and the state imposed a lot of restrictions around that, including a lot of video surveillance requirements. So we became experts at that, and have been working with the cannabis industry in and around California since 2016. And we're always adapting and growing. As I mentioned earlier, the pandemic was an opportunity for us to kind of revisit a lot of our all the pieces in our stack, if you will, and decide what was going to be relevant going forward and what wasn't. The one thing we were convinced of was that remote work was never going to go away. I mean, how quickly people settled into working remotely, I think shocked a lot of people. There was a sense early on, if you remember 2 years ago, almost to the week, when California decided to shut down, everybody thought it was going to be a couple of weeks, maybe 6 weeks, maybe a month, and then we get back to normal. We were so naive in those days, so naive. But we like a lot of people, we had to work with our clients to get them set up so that their employees could work remotely, those that could stay open and continue to operate. And that opened up a whole new opportunity for us to become more knowledgeable about how hybrid workforces can operate. That's one of the reasons that our Azure business grew dramatically during that time frame, as companies discovered that on-prem solutions are great when you're there at the office, but they're not so great when you aren't at the office and you're trying to access data and access information, and VPNs are slow. And it just was we've done a significant number of Azure migrations as equipment has aged out, as operating systems have become end of life, rather than just kind of do what we used to do, which is rip and replace, right? Just get new hardware, new software, put it all, migrate the data. Now we're just re-looking at everything and trying to decide what's the best solution, whether it's in the cloud or whether it's on-prem or some other solution, but we want to do what's best for our clients.
So we've talked in the past about your IoT side, and that's one of the things that you're known for, given that you're an early pioneer in the IoT space. And you mentioned you work with the cannabis industry, and I don't want to rehash a lot of old ground that we've had, so we'll point back maybe to the an older episode for people to learn a little bit more about that side. But how much of your business now is IoT and Azure compared to what it was, say, 5 years ago?
I'd say probably close to 60% of our business, if not more, is related to, well, I'll say this, 100% is related to IoT, because the way that we view the world in IoT is every client that we work with has IoT embedded in their networks, embedded in their systems. And many MSPs don't manage those devices. They just kind of ignore them and say, okay, well, they have an IP address, that's all I care about. For us, especially because of the security concerns that we now have to deal with, those are devices that we need to understand and we need to incorporate into our planning and into our things like vulnerability scanning and patching and updating, because they can be a risk. And for us, what we're seeing is that traditional devices, things like the PC desktop or the laptop, is giving way in a lot of places, especially in agriculture, to connectivity via a tablet or via a smartphone, and having all your apps accessible through the cloud, and having to build out the infrastructure in some of these more rural areas that don't have robust internet access, or like Rich, they're still operating on 56K modems. We're working with a lot of carriers and a lot of providers to try to expand that, either using public means, or in some cases, some of our clients are just investing in private networks that we're building out for.
Rich, did you hear the dial-up sound when you reconnected?
Yeah, absolutely. A blast from the past.
And the little voice that said, "You've got mail." So now, Luis, with IoT and a lot of the kind of monitoring and stuff that you're doing, there's also a huge opportunity in data analytics and AI. Is that and all that's a lot of powered through stuff like Azure. How is that side of your business growing, and is that side becoming a very profitable side of the business as well?
It is. It's something that we partner with a lot. There's a lot of really good companies out there that specialize in developing, machine learning technology and doing the kind of analysis that's necessary in order to really dig into the data that you have. And somebody once said data is the new oil, right? In terms of it's a raw product, but when you refine it, it turns into something that's actionable, something that's that you can monetize. And we've seen how the big boys do that, the Facebooks and the Googles and everybody else. But small companies are now starting to realize that they can monetize that data. We're working with a local lettuce co-op, which doesn't sound like much, right? But they set the price for lettuce throughout the country, and they do it or have been doing it largely, basically developing a bunch of Excel spreadsheets that have a bunch of macros that are built into them. But they've realized after we started working with them that they were barely touching the surface of the data that they had and what they could really provide to their co-op members in terms of analysis. So we're partnering with a company up in Santa Cruz, just north of us, that specializes in doing that, and we're working with them to take that data, put it into SQL and SQL workload in Azure, and then having that workload be accessible by some of the Power BI and some of the other machine learning tools that are out there that can make it more valuable for them and make it add value, add money, add revenue to their bottom line rather than treating it as an expense.
So I have to imagine with the type of work that you're starting to specialize in, you must be learning a lot of crazy things. Like you probably know more about lettuce than you ever probably wanted to know about lettuce.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
Tell us a couple of the interesting niches that you've partnered with someone to work with, that you've learned stuff that you didn't think you would learn.
Well, the cannabis industry, needless to say, taught me a lot of lessons about how cannabis is processed and what's a good plant and what's a bad plant. I have skills that I didn't even know I would ever have in terms of developing cannabis oil, but that's a different part of my life. Most recently, actually, we had to solve a problem for one of our clients that turned into a huge opportunity for us, and that's labor, as I alluded to earlier, is really in short supply, and especially at the lower levels, right? So the kind of traditional 15 to, at least in California, $15 to $18 an hour workers that were considered frontline workers are very hard to find, especially for guard services. They just can't keep guards in place anymore. No matter how much they pay them. So we worked with another one of our partners to develop a technology offering that uses, rather than using live guards, provides video surveillance that is backed by AI that then can call a live guard to intervene in any sort of incident. So rather than having a patrol, a typical patrol service that comes by in a car every few hours, or having to pay for live guards 7x24, we can use these cameras backed by AI to detect unusual occurrences. So it'll ignore a dog, for example, that walks by, but if somebody stops and stares at the camera, it's going to alert and then determine whether that person should be there or not. And if they're not supposed to be there because of either the time of day or where the location is, then they call a guard who can interact with that person using two-way audio, and even chase them away. It has a loud ass horn, let me tell you. If they, worst case, if the person doesn't leave, they can call the authorities and bring in somebody to, take care of the problem. And the cops love it locally because they know that when they get a call from the live guards, it's a legitimate thing. It's just not, some little old lady that thought she saw something that may be a problem, and can you come out, send a police officer over? So they respond much quicker. And so that part of our business is exploding. And now we got permission from the state of California to test that in cannabis sites rather than them using live guards, which they're required to do 7x24, and which costs them about $28,000 per guard per month. They can now, replace that guard with a $1,000 a month solution that is extremely easy to use and very effective.
Is there a growing side, like in biometrics in your business? Because I'm hearing, cameras that can determine whether you're supposed to be there. Is there a biometric element to this? Is it doing facial scanning or anything like that?
There is, but we've got to be careful about it. Again, it's the great Republic of California, and they have a lot of privacy rules around how you can use facial recognition and what you can and can't do. So we try to downplay the cameras are perfectly capable of doing facial recognition and we're using that in workplaces where it's still, where it's legal to do that. So inside a Canvas facility, for example, if somebody wants to get access to a certain door or a certain part of the warehouse, you have to manage that access. And normally you do that with key cards. Some places still use, traditional keys. Well, now you can just use facial recognition to let people in and out and not have to worry about, somebody having a key card or losing that key card. And you can turn off access by the press of a button. You don't have to worry about collecting keys up or trying to find the key fobs.
Very, very interesting and very cool. We could probably hear about your business all day long because it's just fascinating, some of the stuff that you're doing. And folks, if you haven't learned a little bit more about Luis Alvarez and his company, take like 5 minutes, go to his website. He'll give you that address here in a little while, or go to the show sheet for episode 216, or if you're on YouTube, you can see us. Open up the description area. Links are in there. Also, like the video, leave a comment, subscribe, hit the bell. You got to do a million things on YouTube, but do all those things. It's worthwhile and it helps us as well. So yeah, go and learn about his business. It's fascinating stuff. Some of the things that he does, and check out some of the other interviews that we've done with him and some of the features we've done in the magazine on him, because he's at the forefront of a lot of opportunity that you might want to look into and check out. So Luis, now when you're not doing these work-related things, are you still down at the local lettuce co-op growing your own lettuce, or what are you doing for fun? Do you have your
my hobbies are largely now around sailing. I'm an avid sailor, so living here in near the Monterey Bay, I get an opportunity to get out on the water pretty much year round. It's a very moderate climate out here, so we can sail in January as well as in August, so that takes up a big chunk of my time. I have a boat that I keep in the marina there in Monterey that I get to take out periodically if I'm not racing on somebody else's boat. And I like to spend a lot of time riding my Peloton. I love that. Well, I think those of us, I had my Peloton before the pandemic hit, but then during the pandemic, it was really easy. You're working from home, so you're like, let me go take 15, 20 minutes, an hour, and let me go ride the bike for a little bit. So I'd ride like a couple times a day just because I needed to break up the monotony of working from home. And I love traveling, which I'm looking forward to getting back into, just hanging out with friends and having good times.
Very cool. So is your boat big? How big is your sailboat?
It's a 25-foot sailboat. It's a Catalina 25. And I race on a class of boats called the Shields. They're about 33 feet long, pretty narrow. It's just a racing boat. There's not a whole lot of space inside of it, but it's fun being out on the water, being close to the ocean, and being scared to death sometimes when you're out there thinking that you're going super fast when you realize I'm really just going 10 miles an hour. So.
And so now a 25-footer, pardon me, I don't know a lot about sailing. Is that something you can do yourself alone, or do you have to have a team?
No, you can single hand a 25-foot if it's properly rigged. That's the thing. A lot of boats, like the ones I talked about that I race on the Shields, those would be difficult to single hand because there's a lot of moving parts. But my boat is easy because all the lines that you pull are right there, right next to you. I got a friend who does sailing on, I think 40. It's a bigger size sailboat, 45 footers or something like that, where there's like a team of like 10 or 12 that you need to do that effectively. She says that she's her job function normally is rail meet. Does that make sense to you? Braille meet is really important. It's what keeps the boat from tipping over. Yeah, I've done plenty of races on big boats where I was rail meet, and you just kind of run from one side of the boat to the other when you're tacking, and try to duck underneath the jib as it swings over your head and smacks you upside the skull.
Yeah, she was describing it to me, and I looked at her after I was hearing about this and all the stuff you have to do in order to keep weight down and when you're racing and what it's like, and I'm like, and you do this for fun, like it doesn't sound fun at all, but hey, I guess to each their own. So exactly. Awesome stuff. Well, I am so glad you're on with us, and glad you're here to go through some stories. And boy, we got a great show ahead. Just to kind of preview what we're going to talk about, we've got Rich is in Cancun, and he's at a Nerdio event. So clearly, we've got some Nerdio news that we're going to talk about. ThreatLocker's in the news this week. They've got something that they've unveiled that you'll want to know about. PAX 8 is also in the news. They've got a couple things we're going to talk about. We're also going to talk about thriving in post-endpoint managed services. So we'll talk about what that means and why that's important down the road. We've got an interview coming up that we did with Michael Schwab, the co-president of D&H Distributing. We did that we had to record that a little earlier. So unfortunately, Luis won't be there for the interview, but he will be here with us and here on the backside of the show when we go to wrap up. That's a great interview. You will not want to miss that. Really, really interesting stuff. That and a whole lot more. So super exciting. And I guess we'll go to the news if Mr. Freeman is still with us. He disappeared, but I see him connected. He's coming back. I think he's trying to save some bandwidth there. No, were you struggling?
No, you're exactly right. I thought maybe if I turn the camera off, that'll help a little bit. And the answer is no, not so much. So if you guys are hearing me as well as I'm hearing you, I'm not sure how much insight I'll be offering about those news stories, but I hope people can make it out because they're all actually pretty interesting.
Well, and so far we're hearing you okay. So let's plow ahead and just see what happens. So let's start. You're in Cancun, Rich. You're talking Nerdio. They've got a new integration with something in the Microsoft Cloud. What is that?
Yeah. So, and I think this is really, really interesting, actually. And it's funny. I sat down with Vadim Vladimirsky, the CEO of Nerdio, and Joseph Landis, the Chief Revenue Officer, both of whom have been interview guests with us before. I sat down with them for an interview the other day, and I said, I think this news is huge, and I'm not sure if I'm thinking too big or not big enough, and you guys have to kind of tell me. Let me try to set this up, and I'll tell you why I think this is really kind of important. So first of all, Nerdio, for folks who don't know Nerdio, they first kind of came onto our radar at Channel Pro because they offered this sort of SMB network in a box solution that was 100% streamed online. It looked to me like it could be maybe the successor to Small Business Server that a lot of our readers were looking for. And so I kind of started investigating Nerdio. Originally, they hosted that on their own infrastructure. Eventually, they ported it onto Microsoft Azure. And in time, they got to be really, really good at maintaining a Microsoft Azure environment. And so today, what they are best known for is helping MSPs wade into Microsoft Azure. Azure is this enormous and incredibly complex environment. You can do a lot of things with it. Nerdio makes a product, most particularly, they make a product called Nerdio Manager for MSP, or NMM, that is a provisioning and a management interface for Azure Virtual Desktop, Microsoft 365, and Windows 365. And in fact, Nerdio, on a behind-the-scenes basis, was very closely involved in the development of Windows 365. They're really kind of plugged in at Microsoft. What they announced this week at their NerdioCon event is that they have integrated NMM, Nerdio Manager for MSP, with Microsoft Endpoint Manager, MEM. Microsoft Endpoint Manager is a tool for managing physical devices. It connects to PCs and Windows-based servers, but also Macs, mobile devices on iOS and Android. And essentially by integrating some of that, so there are probably a lot of people who are familiar with Microsoft Endpoint Manager, but probably not a lot of folks in the audience using it, in part because it's a little bit complex and big and new, and that's been sort of intimidating for people. And so Nerdio now has kind of taken, they're all about making Azure easier, right? That's sort of their message. So now they're taking some of that Microsoft Endpoint Manager functionality, essentially importing it into their Nerdio Manager for MSP product and providing that functionality in conjunction with the Azure management functionality they were already offering. And so what you wind up with is a tool that in the past was really good at managing virtual resources, virtual desktops, virtual servers, software as a service applications, now has some administrative capacity for physical resources as well, for PCs and mobile devices. So why is that important? Well, let's take a step back a little bit right now. As Luis was saying, everybody is charging into the cloud right now. And so cloud management is increasingly becoming the challenge for MSPs. And we're going to talk about post-endpoint managed services later. I mean, that's the story here. It's like managing the hardware is less and less strategic, important. It's really managing what happens in the cloud that's important. And so you've got two sets of companies striving to help MSPs with that right now. You've got the well-known established RMM companies like Datto and Kaseya and ConnectWise, et cetera. And they have these RMM tools that lots of people use. They've got lots of money. They've got big partner bases. They've got name brand recognition. But they are very strong on the hardware management. They're very new to the cloud, and they're working on that. On the other hand, you've got this new crop of companies that are all about cloud management. And I'm thinking about companies like Skykick and Augment and Jump Cloud. Born in the cloud, cloud management is all they do. But they're much smaller, they're less well known. And significantly, to my knowledge at least, they don't really give you much ability to manage the endpoint, the physical device. Now all of a sudden, here's Nerdio kind of in the middle. They have a bit of an established footprint in the market. They're not brand new to the market here. They're born in the cloud. They certainly know the cloud technologies. They have very strong, robust tools for managing those cloud technologies. But now they're incorporating some of that physical endpoint management into that same interface. And I asked the Nerdio guys straight out, are you turning your tool into the RMM of tomorrow? And they said, no, that is not our ambition. We don't, we're not trying to be an RMM tool and compete with the RMM tools. And I will just tell you that when I shared that comment with some of the partners, the MSPs here at the event, two of them in particular laughed. Because from their perspective, it's like, I don't care what you call it. It's an RMM, it's not an RMM. As this one particular woman, an MSP from Massachusetts, said to me, increasingly, this is the one interface I need to run my business to the degree that I'm going all in on the cloud as I'm going cloud first. That's my model of the future. This tool more and more is becoming the one place that I need to be. And the fact that I can touch the endpoints now too, as well as all the virtual stuff, is actually very powerful. So big, long story there, but that's why I think this is actually kind of a big deal.
Luis, an RMM or not an RMM? What say
well,
ye?
It's funny. I am actually meeting with Nerdio next week at an event that I'm attending, specifically to talk about this product and how it differentiates from other Microsoft initiatives like their Microsoft Lighthouse. I don't know if you're familiar with that platform, but that's a tenant management platform that Microsoft has made available to MSPs to make it easier to manage their, to kind of do similar things that what Nerdio is talking about. The difference though is that there they use MEM completely and they don't have the Nerdio integration. So I think it's a threat to the traditional RMM providers. I think that we're still trying to figure out as MSPs how to effectively manage our cloud applications through a single pane of glass, right? That was the magic of the RMM world, was I got one portal that I go to and I can do everything. Well, that's not the case when you have Azure, when you have, M365, you might be using Google and you might be using AWS. And so now you have all these different ways that you have to interact with all these services, and there's not one consistent tool that you can use. So to me, whoever builds that tool that can manage not just cloud, but also, physical devices, as well as network devices, as well as mobile devices, they're going to win. They're going to be the platform of choice. I do think there'll be multiple players that achieve that in the not too distant future. So we'll have to see at the end of the day who is going to emerge from that pile and who's just going to get absorbed by the ones that win the race.
Seems like we've been chasing the single pane of glass for a long time, and usually when someone comes out and says we've made the single pane of glass, MSPs just realize that they now have an 11th piece of glass that they have to have up on their
pretty
screen.
much. Yeah.
So Rich, it sounds like a big deal, and Luis, it sounds like you think it's also kind of a big deal too. What is Nerdio's model for monetization? Is this something you pay a monthly to Nerdio to unlock these features in MEM? Because since it's in MEM, it's a little weird. How does that work?
Well, they are importing the MEM functionality directly into their product. So you're not kind of like licensing that separately to my knowledge. It's just, it's part of what you get for your subscription to NMM.
Okay, so you're using like a Nerdio portal, and then that has all the functionality built in, is what you're saying, right? Well, exactly. I know, Luis, do you use Nerdio? Are you a Nerdio partner?
We're not.
But that
we are, obviously we use MEM, which is, the Microsoft Endpoint Manager. And typically in order to use it, it's included with their business premium licenses as well as E3. So most MSPs who are working with their clients' tenants have access to it. It's there, it's in the portal. But as we were alluding to earlier, Azure and this Microsoft 365 behemoth has so much stuff in it that you cannot learn every stinking thing that's in there before something new shows up. And so for a lot of people, when MEM was introduced, they didn't recognize that it was part of their subscription already, and they weren't using it. So now that gave you access to Intune. That gave you access to a bunch of really useful tools that could help you manage your network across both, in-house and remote hybrid workers. We are taking advantage of that because it is something that our clients already have and are paying for. So I'm interested to see what this additional Nerdio layer provides and gives us beyond what we already have.
Yeah, interesting. And we will keep an eye out for there. Rich, anything else to add on the Nerdio story before we move on to the next Nerdio story?
Well, I was kind of rolling those two together, so I'll just kind of quickly bridge to that, because in some ways it's hard to find other companies that do exactly what Nerdio does, especially now. But even before this integration announcement, they kind of felt like they were sort of in a class of their own. And out of curiosity, as much as anything else, I asked them during this interview I did here at the event, who do you consider your competitors, right? Because they were pretty clear about saying we're not competing with the RMM companies. So who are the competitors? And their answer to that, and this is something that they think about a lot, and this is the thrust of that second article that you're alluding to there. From their perspective, their number one competitor is you, channel pros. It's you, the MSPs, because they at Nerdio are 100% bought into this idea that to remain relevant, to be the MSP of tomorrow instead of the MSP of yesterday, you've really got to be a cloud first MSP. And that has implications not just for the tools you use, but what you sell and how you sell it and how you work with the customer. And that involves some change. You've got to think some things through to kind of make that transition. And in a sense, their biggest competition, they believe, is the majority of that, probably vast majority of channel pros out there who either don't get that. I mean, they head in the sand, they don't see that coming, they're not thinking about it, or they know that that's an issue and that's what they need to do, but they're so overwhelmed by it, they don't really know where to begin. So like the biggest threat to their continued growth from their perspective, it's not another vendor. It's this sort of inertia was the word that they used multiple times within the SMB channel about making the move to cloud. And so one of the things that they announced at the show is that they are rolling out a whole bunch of new partner enablement, partner engagement resources. They have this whole new series of what they're calling office hour calls every week, where you can get live answers to questions on business or technical matters. They're introducing, or at least piloting, something that they call the CEO Summit, where about 10 or 12 MSPs a month will get to fly into Chicago, where Nerdio is headquartered, expenses paid basically, and meet face-to-face with Vadim and with the leadership team over there. They're going to be doing a whole bunch of in-person training events, 7 of them, 6 in the US and 1 in London. So they're really kind of pouring some money into reaching out to the channel, talking to the channel, training the channel, because that's what they view as the competitive challenge. It's not, it's keeping ahead of the RMM makers or the other cloud management vendors. It's getting the MSPs out there to take that first step towards the cloud first model that they need from Nerdio's perspective.
So Luis, how do you feel about that, knowing that you're Nerdio's competitor? Does that excite you?
Yeah, I don't discount it. Yeah, that's exactly what I'm competing. But I do get what they're saying, is that just like today, I'm personally shocked at how many resellers there are out there that have not embraced managed services. As we were saying 15 years ago, oh yeah, if you don't make the leap to services, you're going to be left behind and your business will suffer. But yet there's a lot of people out there that are perfectly fine moving boxes and are making good money doing it, as Nerdio pointed out. I do think that they're taking a page from what a lot of other vendors are doing, recognizing that it's in their best interest to educate the reseller channel and get people smart on these technologies so they can continue to grow their business, because it does them no good to build these great platforms and then not have a way to get the word out that those platforms are available and can be used by end user clients. So we are, whether we like it or not, we in the channel are the kingmakers when it comes to some of these companies, and they recognize that, and they want to do everything they can to educate us. Hence why PAX 8 has their training, regular training cadence that they do with their partners at no cost. Bringing them in sometimes to locations and doing 3-day workshops to get them smart on Azure and on M365, so that then they can go out and sell more of those licenses. So they're just investing in growth. And I think it's a smart move on their part.
Rich, anything else to add?
Just one quick thing that kind of popped into my head when Luis was talking before, which is, I mean, obviously what's important about this from my perspective is it's a step in the direction of that fabled single pane of glass for Nerdio in a particularly interesting way. But the thing that maybe prevents NMM from being the single pane of glass is that it is 100% Microsoft focused. So you mentioned, Luis, there's Google out there and AWS, and I did ask, and apparently everybody asked them. This was not like an original question to get from me, but I did ask, any interest in adding AWS or Google to this tool at some point? And they, they certainly didn't rule it out, but the basis of the answer was just that there's a whole lot more work to be done in the Microsoft world, and the Microsoft cloud really dominates in the SMB channel. So no, near term, even probably medium term thought about getting into other clouds over there. They're going to stay Microsoft focused, and so that is one kind of limitation on being the the one interface to rule them all.
Well, and having such ties to Microsoft probably make more sense than trying to build out those relationships. But I mean, Google plays in the SMB space, don't they, Luis?
Oh yeah, very actively involved in the SMB space. We have clients that are using Google as their hosted service, either the suite of products or even servers that are in the Google Cloud, which we manage as well. So we have to be, even though we're Microsoft first shop, in reality we're a cloud first shop. So for us, what cloud service we use is really dictated by the needs of the clients that we're working with, not by our desire to put them on one specific thing. All things being equal and them not caring one way or another, then we're going to throw them on Azure. But if they're looking for a specific type of performance or a specific type of need, AWS might be the better solution for them. Interesting.
Well, very good. Well, we'll have to just see what Nerdio does and how this plays out. But it sounds like it could be a big thing for them and for those who use who are looking for something that can kind of manage two things, the cloud and the endpoints kind of simultaneously. So we'll keep an eye on that. And anytime that they want to fly Rich out to Cancun, he's probably not gonna argue with him. So, all right. Well, we'll move on to our next story, which is about ThreatLocker. They've unveiled something new. Rich, what is that?
They certainly have. And if I had not been here in Cancun this week, sucking margaritas and data through a straw, I would have been in Florida attending ThreatLocker's event. They did their Zero Trust World event this week. And at that show, they announced a new product, a new addition to their platform. And it is their first network access security solution. So ThreatLocker calls the event Zero Trust World because they are 100% focused on zero trust. They are probably best known to people in our audience for their application security technology, which utilizes a whitelist approach to keep anything that you don't know is trustworthy away from the end user. And then they decided that they wanted to, and they have actually been moving into other areas of security, but the big one that they wanted to get into was network security. And they wanted to take a similarly zero trust approach to that. But how do you do that? Basically, you can't create a device, a physical endpoint whitelist, right? Because devices get different IP addresses pretty much every time they connect. Especially if you're mobile and you're traveling around. So it's impossible to maintain a whitelist of approved IP addresses. The sort of preferred network access security approach, or the default one in the SMB channel world right now, has been VPN, but VPN has its problems too in terms of performance. So it's an imperfect solution, but the best one that a lot of people have access to them. The approach that they came up with at ThreatLocker to this issue is to use an agent on the endpoint to authenticate the device to the ThreatLocker service. Only endpoints with that agent, endpoints that are recognized by the service, can access the network. And so that's kind of what the whitelist or zero trust piece of that is. They're not letting anything in unless that device can send over the magic signal, via the agent that says, I'm legit and you can let me in. And so it's a different approach. I'm not expert enough in network security to kind of know if there's anything else out there that does this. I do know that Danny Jenkins, the CEO of ThreatLocker, is convinced that there's nobody else doing this kind of a thing right now. And it is bringing a zero trust security philosophy, which is what many people are really trying to achieve increasingly these days, to the network security scenario.
Yeah, Luis, I can't think of anyone doing network access control in this way. What do you? But I know this is a big issue, especially as workforces have gotten much more remote and hybrid, and they're connecting all over the places, and VPNs are kind of used to get people access to stuff. This is a problem. Is this the solution? What do you think of this?
Well, we're big ThreatLocker fans. We've been using them for over a year. We're big believers of zero trust, and as my chief security officer Jeff Dick says, he sleeps better at night knowing that ThreatLocker's out there, and the likelihood of ransomware being embedded in our client systems is a lot less risky. We also have clients using VPNs, and they are problematic, and they're sometimes difficult to set up, and we want to set up multi-factor authentication on them so that we add an additional layer of security, but then you're adding more complexity at both ends of the equation. So we get a lot of help desk calls every day of people who are trying to remotely access the network and they forgot the MFA process, and we have to remind them of it. So we're really excited about this product. We actually signed up to be a beta tester, but they had already filled up the betas. So they said, no, you have to wait till the product's released. And I want to see it in action. They're going to be that same event that I'm attending next week. So I'm going to make it a point to visit with them and see what this means. When they say it can replace VPNs, that's a pretty bold statement, right? Because VPNs have to go through a firewall. So how do you get around that? What's the process? So I'm excited to see it in action, because it might really help. Well, I know if it works as advertised and it does what I think it's going to do, then this is going to alleviate a lot of complexity and stress for remote hybrid workers.
Yeah, I caught that line in the article from Mr. Jenkins, where he said you're going to be able to remove VPN access because you don't have to worry about that anymore. Expand on that. How can you remove that?
That's the question I want to know. I mean, to me, it's like, okay, well, the VPNs are how you connect up to the network through the firewall. So if you don't need that connection, then what exactly is the process, and what does network access mean in that case?
Right, you don't want machines talking directly to other machines over the open web, right? Or is that what they're going? Or is that what they're doing?
Is it just a more secure version of log me in, or what exactly are we talking about? So I'm very interested to see it in action. I tried to, when they announced it and let us know that it was out in beta testing, I tried to learn more about it, but there isn't a lot of material to discover just yet. So I will report back after I talk to them next week. Yeah,
I'd be really curious to see what you learn and what you figure out. Rich, anything else to add on the ThreatLocker story? I'm sure we're gonna follow this one. Oh, and I usually like to ask about pricing and stuff. Is this like an extra fee for this? Do they talk about that? Is it a separate subscription, or do you just get it with your ThreatLocker partnership?
So Lewis can kind of check me on this, but I believe the way pricing in general works at ThreatLocker is, so they have now, I guess, 5 now different modules, or however you want to refer to it. They don't think of them as separate products. They're all part of the ThreatLocker platform, but you can kind of mix and match them. So you pay them a platform fee just for access to the platform, and then an additional fee on top of that for whichever of those now 5 components that you want to utilize. I think that's how the pricing works. Is that right, Lewis?
Yeah, it's tiered pricing as well. So the more you use, the less you pay, and they bundle in to make it more attractive. So, for example, we use the application whitelisting piece as well as the storage control, because most of our clients want to be able to decide who gets to put in a USB key into their PC and copy files and who can't copy files. So having the ability to lock down USB ports, or even certain file shares and workstations and servers is important to us. So, we're part of the bundle. When I asked our reps, what would this cost? They were telling me it was going to be at our level under $1 per, to add it to the stack that we're using per user. So I think that's very doable for what we provide our clients.
Very cool. Well, it looks interesting. I can't wait to hear a little bit more about this particular product as they unroll it and learn more about how it works. I know it's a big pain point, like I said, for lots of MSPs, especially with a broadening remote workforces. So this might be the thing that keeps your customers safe. Rich, moving on to network safety and firewalls and all that kind of stuff. PAX 8 is in the news. They've added some of those things to their catalog. What did they add?
Well, interestingly enough, and I thought maybe this was like a first for them, but it isn't, as I'll explain in a moment. But interestingly enough, what PAX 8 has added to its solution catalog is hardware in the form of firewall from WatchGuard specifically. So PAX 8 is we were talking born in the cloud before. PAX 8 is a born in the cloud distributor. They are all about distributing cloud solutions. They have, already a pretty good solid lineup of line card relationships with security vendors in a lot of different categories. They haven't up until this week had a network security product in that lineup. Now they do. WatchGuard is their first network security partner. There may be others, but they decided to go with WatchGuard for a number of different reasons. What was interesting about this to me, like I said, when I was first reading about this, is everything is cloud with PAX 8. A firewall is actually a device. So like, how does that work? Basically, if you order a WatchGuard solution via PAX 8, WatchGuard will fulfill that. So they will ship the hardware directly to wherever it needs to go, your office or to the end user. Most of the tier 1 support for that product is going to come from PAX 8 itself. If there's support that they can't provide or it needs to get elevated, WatchGuard kind of steps into the process as well. If there's on-site support that's needed, WatchGuard is available to kind of assist with that too. This is not the first time that PAX 8 has done this kind of thing. I wasn't aware. If I had thought about it, it would have occurred to me that they must be doing this already, because they have been partnering closely with Datto for a long time. And you can buy Datto BDR appliances via PAX 8, and it works exactly the same way. Datto kind of fulfills the hardware order and ships it out and assists with the support and so on. So, this is part of an ongoing kind of effort at PAX 8 to sort of fill out the security portfolio a little bit and get into more categories, kind of complete the stack of security solutions that their partners need to be delivering. And this is a pretty big category to step into for them. It was kind of a decent sized gap, and they found a very well-known, respected partner to do that with.
Well, it's clear why they picked WatchGuard, right? Because their firewalls are red. That's why. You have to go by the color. Louis, is that how you pick all your security products, by what color they paint them?
Yeah, but I would never drive a red car because, statistically, you're more likely to get pulled over for speeding if you drive a red car. I don't know if that's true or not, but somebody told me that once. PAX 8 is one of our distributors, and they've actually been doing, in addition to Datto, Axient, which is another backup provider that does mostly cloud services, but you can buy on-premise appliances, and they will do what Rich talked about, do the fulfillment and send it in and do tier 1 support. But I do think that security products don't. You're going to have some hardware security products, at some point. And so it's a smart move for them to dip their toe into that and provide value. PAX 8 is a good company that we work with, and they pride themselves on not just adding a layer between you and the vendor, but adding value between you and the vendor of choice. And so if they can't do that, then it's not really worth it to them to pursue that relationship. So I'm sure that they pick Watchdog for a reason, and we're not a Watchdog company. We're Sonic Wall and Cisco. So for us, it's not going to give us something that we don't that we need. But I think that there's a lot of Watchdog partners out there that would enjoy working with PAX 8. So good move on their part.
With so much traction in like software-defined networking, is there a cloud-based firewall? Like, can this be done all in the cloud?
There are people that are trying to do it all in cloud. Just like if you use Azure or AWS or Google's hosted services, they have a software-defined firewall that's part of that package that you can configure much like any other firewall. And Cisco Meraki has actually added a Meraki, an MX100 virtual appliance in the Azure stack that you can use instead of using the Windows or the Microsoft firewall that they supply, if you want to keep your stack intact. And there's some value to that if you have a lot of other MX security appliances in your system, because then you can manage them all through the dashboard that you manage all your firewalls through. But in terms of a firewall that means that you don't have to have a physical physical device, I don't think we're there yet. I think, you can do it if you're a SOHO, small business, that you can use, an agent on your desktop or on multiple desktops that are forced to connect to a web-based firewall. But it's trying to do that in an enterprise or even a small business is difficult.
So not yet. That's why you can get the shiny red WatchGuard firewalls now through Pax8. That's why they do this. So there's some other stuff in this article, some good quotes and some other information that you might want to check out. So if you're interested in this, you're a Pax8 partner, you go and open up the show sheet for episode 216. We got all the links there, so you can go and and really that's with all the stories we're talking about. We're just kind of giving you our thoughts and the overview from above. But go and check out all the articles and get all of the detail, read along as we're talking about them, so that way you are totally filled in. If you're watching on YouTube, again, open the description area. If you're on your phone, sometimes the links are there in the phone. Otherwise, go to the episode sheet at channelpronetwork.com for episode 216 and check it out. So Rich, we got a story that we're going to talk about, and I've got some news for those people out there. If you are kind of an old school, I don't want to say old school, if you're a hardware focused IT integrator, thinking about going into endpoint managed services, you're too late. It's already done. It's over. Sorry. We're going to talk about how to thrive in post-endpoint managed services. So Rich, people missed the train. Now what?
Well, you'd better start thinking about now. And we've already actually started talking about this, haven't we, in the context of Nerdio. Managed services as we know it has up until now, and it's still to an enormous extent, all been about device management, basically. It's all about the endpoints. It's about the PCs and the servers. And as those become increasingly interchangeable and less sort of strategic, and as the cloud services that you access via those devices, and who cares what device you use to access the cloud service, right? As it's what's happening in the cloud that is more and more central and strategic and valuable to the end user, we are entering what this article refers to, rightly, I believe, as the post-endpoint era of managed services. And then the question becomes, how do you, as an MSP, remain relevant to your customer and continue to deliver services that will yield a profit that they will pay for? Because you really, from a longer term perspective, you really don't want to be the hardware specialist, because that's just not what the businesses out there are going to be looking for, is help with the hardware. It's help with everything else. That's what this article really is about. And I won't kind of run people through the substance of the article, but just the idea was, well, okay, if my offering, my value proposition isn't so much about keeping the devices up and running, although as Nerdio, their recent move reflects, there are still going to be devices in the equation, and you do still have to manage those. But if that's not really the core of what you're about, then what is? And that's where you start getting into being able to communicate more strategically, think more strategically with your customers, help them understand what's possible in the cloud, help them do more with the cloud technologies that they have. I have to believe that the average Microsoft 365 subscriber out there is scratching the surface of what they could be doing with SharePoint, for example, if they're doing anything with that product at all. It's really getting beyond being the hardware manager, outsourced hardware manager, and being more of that cliche alert, trusted advisor, and being the outsourced kind of CIO and having that strategic conversation with the customer. And so there are some specific suggestions from folks in this article, but and I do encourage people to read the article, but more importantly, I encourage them to kind of think about this issue, because when Nerdio said their competitor is the MSP who is not making the transition to the cloud-first business model of tomorrow, this is exactly what they were talking about. If you are stuck in the hardware-first model, the clock is ticking basically on your relevance.
Yeah, and fortunately, our guest that we have here today, Mr. Alvarez, is definitely not one of those. I would say you're definitely one that has kind of shaped your business around, and where your core, like, I'm sure you're still managing endpoints, but that's not what you are about.
Right. I mean, for us, we're about, like I said earlier, making sure that our clients are maximizing the value of the technology that they either already own or that they plan to acquire. So a good example was at the beginning of the pandemic, our clients were, flummoxed. Well, how do we all communicate? How do we work from home? Do we have to call each other? And fortunately, the large majority of our clients, I'd say 95%, are on Microsoft 365. So we said, no, you have a perfectly great tool that we've been trying to talk to you into using called Teams for the last year or 2 years, and you just don't want to use it. And now you're going to have to use it. Let us set it up for you. So we had a significant amount of experience because we used the Teams internally. We had convinced a few of our clients to use it for collaboration. So all of a sudden, we were solving a problem that our clients had without them having to spend any more money than they were already spending, because they already own the product. And that many of them had said, well, we have to get WebEx, or we have to get Zoom, and we're like, nope, you don't have to get anything. You're covered. And their trust in us came from the fact that we had steered them in the right direction, and they knew that we had talked to them about Teams in the past, so they weren't mad or disappointed that we hadn't told them about it. They were like really happy that now they had a solution to the problem. Now, how quickly could we get them up and running and trained? So we spent a lot of time in the first few weeks doing that, and that's always been the direction that we as a company have gone, and that's that we are a strategic partner with our clients, and that provides a basis for us to determine who we want to partner with, because not every client thinks strategically or cares to think strategically. And not every client wants a strategic partner. They just want a vendor. They want somebody to call when they have a problem, and you come in, you fix the problem and go away. And then we have to sit down and say, well, that's not the way we operate. Here's why. And then they start buying into that. So when we started our cloud journey, back when we subscribed to what was then the really sexily named Business Productivity Online Suite, BPOS, if you remember that was Microsoft's original, Office 365 iteration. Didn't sell a lot of that because nobody even wanted BPOS. So they thought it was a disease and there was no vaccines for it. So no, thank you. Fortunately, they changed the name. But we've always eaten our own dog food, so to speak. So whatever we sell our clients or recommend to our clients, we've already had a lot of experience in using, for the most part. And so we knew that the cloud was a thing, that this wasn't just a passing fancy. I remember attending a conference shortly after Microsoft started making Office 365 subscriptions easier, when the CSP program came into play. And one of my peers at this conference said, well, I don't know why they're doing this, because everybody's going to go back on premise here pretty quick. I'm really excited that, we're going to be selling a lot more Exchange, because all these people that dumped it now are going to have to buy it again. And I'm like, you really believe that? And, I was incredulous, but that was, one person's opinion. And to Nerdio's point, there's going to be people that don't make that leap, that decide, hey, I'm old enough, I'm going to sell my business or retire and take down my shingle in a couple of years. I don't need to learn anything new. I'm just going to, do what I do for the next 2 to 3 years and be done with it, rather than jump into something where I have to re-educate myself and re-educate my team. And It's just easier to do it this way. And the sad part of that is that that person's clients are the ones that are going to suffer, because what happens is at the moment that they leave that person and they get a new provider in, they're going to discover all the missed opportunities that they had and how far behind they actually are in, their digital journey that they're going to have to do anyway, because that's the direction they're going to have to go. So I think it is something that if you're out there and you haven't embraced cloud services yet, if you're hesitant, you really need to ask yourself, am I in this for the long haul? And if you are, then you need to make that leap.
And according to the article, Rich, anybody who makes that leap can call themselves an MSP 7.0, because that's a designation that it means what now?
I'm sorry, you were breaking up there. An MSP what?
MSP 7.0 is what they can call themselves, according to the article.
Yeah, I found that kind of interesting too. We skipped over a number of releases in there somewhere to get straight to 7.0, but
and if you're really good at it, you can crank it up to 11, and you can call yourself MSP 11.0. And then there's going to be that other guy, though, who calls himself 11.1 just because he wants to be that one dot better than you. And then before you know it, Luis, we're doing Google numbers in terms of revisions, and we're going to be in the hundreds. So it's gonna be a fast track thing.
Yeah, when Microsoft came out with Windows 10 and they said this is the last version of Windows, we decided that we're going to just be MSP 10.0 and now what happened, right? So
you got to align your MSP number with the current Windows number, which is exactly 11. So good. Everything snaps together nicely at 11. Let's not move from there. Very cool. Well, good story. There's a lot in this article, folks. Check out the show sheet for episode 216. Open up the description area on YouTube. Go and read it. It'll definitely give you something to think about. And if you're in the MSP 0.1 to 4 range, however you want to figure out that scale, this is for you. This is what you want to check out. With that, we are going to take a short break. And when we come back, we have a great interview with Michael Schwab. He's the co-president of D&H Distributing. We're going to be talking about market opportunities, industry conditions, lots of interesting stuff. Unfortunately, like I said earlier, Luis, we had to record this earlier in the day when Michael was available, and Luis was not available at the moment, but he will be back with us on the other side in part 3. But definitely check this interview out. It's really good stuff. We will see you in just a second. Welcome back to part 2 of this episode of ChannelProWeekly. While many industries have struggled through the coronavirus pandemic and global supply chain disruptions, the IT industry has, for the most part, had it pretty well. Global IT spending is up. Categories like security and cloud solutions are driving big numbers. Distributor D&H in particular as well, reporting double-digit growth and massive year-over-year gains. But what is the outlook for 2022? Well, here to discuss that and market opportunities for Channel Pros is Michael Schwab, co-president at D&H Distributing. Welcome, Michael.
Thank you, Matt. Very happy to be here. It really is a great time, as you described, to be in the IT distribution and, in fact, holistically, the technology industry. It has never been more opportunistic, in my opinion, of what I see forthcoming for ourselves, for our reselling partners, and our manufacturers. So a great time to be in IT.
Yeah, it sure is. It seems like the coronavirus pandemic handed over a lot of opportunity for Channel Pros who needed to help their customers get remote, like workforces remote and all that stuff. And there was a lot of demand and a lot of things to do. So we're going to talk about 2022 in a second, because, we're kind of maybe coming to the end of that a little bit. Maybe we'll see. So that is certainly going to change the outlook in the marketplace a little bit. But first, I'd love it if you could take a couple of minutes to tell us a little bit more about you and a little bit more about what you do at D&H.
Absolutely, Matt. So again, I'm one of the co-presidents here at D&H. I share that responsibility with my brother, Dan. I've been with the company 32 years, and the company's been in existence actually 104 years. So, a remarkable journey along many generations. We are an employee-owned company, and my role in particular is to steer D&H in the direction where we see business growth and opportunities, where we can in turn help support our reselling partners and our manufacturers deliver best-in-class technology into the Canadian and US marketplace. You know, D&H likes to pride itself on many of its marketing and sales and go-to-market initiatives, but I think in particular, our SMB strategy has proven to be quite resilient, and sort of year after year in my tenure, it's been a remarkable journey to see how that business has really grown and become so robust in opportunity. So
have you worked with your brother for 32 years?
Just about, yeah. That is a lot of sibling rivalry to get through in that personal and professional lives. But yeah, we get along quite well, and I think we're very complementary in what we do. And you know, again, as a family-owned business, privately held, employee-owned business, you know, we think about the opportunities not only for today, how we can maximize business, but you know, for the future, and what does that runway of success look like beyond the most recent quarter or year.
Wow, that's pretty impressive. My two kids can't even share like a video game console.
Yeah, can't agree on the
same
TV
job
show,
role for
right?
32
Yeah.
years.
Yeah, it's yeah, no doubt. It works well for us, but I've seen it you know, cause some challenges for others in other industries. But you know, we really are quite proud of the journey that D&H has been on.
Very cool. So I have to ask, have you and your brother ever gotten like a little squabble in a meeting? I have to know.
So, you know, it is so interesting when you think about, you know, sibling and relationships. I'm the older brother. So if he just accepts, which he often does, that I'm a little smarter, a little better looking, a little better athlete, you know, all that goodness sort of fell through my genealogy. You know, once we got over that, I think it's been smooth sailing ever since.
And probably a good place to kind of pivot to what we're talking about, which is 2022. There's a lot of question about where things are going to go in 22 as the pandemic hopefully winds to an end and things start to get back to whatever the new normal is going to be. I don't know if I like that expression, but things are certainly going to be different. What are you seeing right now in 2022?
So, you know, we're only 2 months in to the calendar year 2022. And I see growth. I see technology products, again, permeating our personal, professional lives in such a way that there's really no turning back. When you think about how much time we spend in front of our devices, interacting with those, you know, that might be down the street, might be, you know, cross state, or might be international, it is remarkable how this video collaboration technology has really connected us in a way that we thought perhaps was impossible in the past. And I think for that reason, when we think about the workforce of the future, immediately the word that comes to my mind is hybrid. That you know, the technology has allowed us to embrace perhaps a work-life balance, a way to communicate and collaborate that never existed before, or if it did exist, for the vast majority of us, we weren't taking advantage of it. And I think about the ecosystem that we've built out across the manufacturers, and again, the reselling partners, and D&H as one of their go-to-market distributors. And I think that the technology conversation is first and foremost in every end user customer's demand and profile. And I think there's growth ahead.
So let's dive in right there on that hybrid story, because one of the markets, I guess two of the markets really that D&H did especially well in last year were Pro AV, so conference room technology, and unified communications. You know, and you could just see how those tie right into the hybrid workforce story. You're going to have people in meetings in the office, at home, they've got to communicate effectively. So what kind of trends are you seeing, have you seen in those markets that might be opportunities for folks in our audience here?
You know, absolutely. And Rich, when I think about this ecosystem in which we all work, if I was going to describe a strategic plan, you know, a white sheet of paper that we could start from scratch and say, how are we all going to work together to sort of build out solutions to support Pro AV and remote working and hybrid environments, I would have, for the vast majority of the attributes that exist in today's business climate relative to technology, I would design it exactly as we sit here today. I think about the manufacturers, Intel and AMD and Qualcomm with, always connected devices, and NVIDIA with their, graphic solutions. I think about Microsoft and Google and how they're embracing these technologies. You sort of correlate that back to, the end user market and how they think about Pro AV and unified communications. And the workplace of yesteryear needs to be transformed, where if you had huddle rooms and they were sort of stagnant and void of technology, every one of those workplaces now, I envision being outfitted with Pro AV equipment that gives a great in-room experience, but also a remote environment experience where there's collaborations, whether you're physically there or working in a remote area relative to that office space. So that in and of itself, I think, creates a huge opportunity for success for the resellers that would be interested in participating in that growth curve. The other thing that I think about when I think about that growth trajectory is security, and we talked about that. You've got this environment going on at this moment where you've got some dislocation between workers thinking about what their current job is, what they want their future job to be. You've got this, the nomenclature, the Great Resignation. So you've got a ton of people switching jobs. And in that environment, security is paramount because you've got utilizations of various technologies while they're employed, and then they leave, and you want to make sure everything remains secured. But at the same time, every time somebody takes a new job, you've got a redeployment of new technology. So you've got an increase of the in the office hybrid solutions, which I think is Pro AV centric. You've got the increased use of devices as people start new jobs, which again, you want the best in class solutions and device that you're using because you have to use it for the conversations like we're doing today in video collaboration. So I just sort of see this momentum building, a continuation of what we've seen during the pandemic of people upgrading, securing, and redeploying technology products in the work and in a hybrid workplace and a hybrid environment.
And, it always kind of bears emphasis, in the context of D&H or any other distributor. For anyone in the audience who's hearing Pro AV and conference room technology and stuff like that and thinking, I don't know how to do that. I mean, there's professional services assistance with, essentially anyone serving SMBs potentially can get into that market, correct?
Yeah, I would argue that the barriers to entry are primarily education. That whether it's, could be Logitech product, myriad of solutions in the marketplace when it comes to video collab and unified communications. The reality is that, those products, there was a supply and demand imbalance for a period of time. I think that is catching up, and by mid-2022, I see much stronger availability in most of the segments in which we serve. And for that reason, even if a reseller is not engaged in this technology deployment today, there's no time like the exact moment we're in to sort of garner that education, get to training, become knowledgeable so that when their end user asks, which inevitably they will, that they are the go-to market partner for those technology deployments. We created a strategy called PartnerFi, which is our community, where we clearly want to take a core group of our partners and make sure that, education is paramount, that this success path of understanding what it is to get from point A to point B to point C is made available to them. So over time, they become not only trained, they get the expert status, and they hire a sales staff that is fully competent in helping their organization succeed, and again, becoming the technology provider of choice.
So one of the markets that I'm really curious about this year, and I had a chance to talk about this with your brother actually last month, and we'll have him on a future episode of the podcast, by the way, so he can editorialize in response to your comments about. But I asked him the question I'll ask you here about the PC market, because there was obviously a huge purchasing wave 2020, 2021, mostly laptops so that people could work from home on better equipment. And so there's a question, how long does that purchasing wave continue? When does that maybe peter out? And does the return to the office potentially set off another buying wave as people are reunited with these aging desktops or whatever? So what are you seeing now in the PC market, and what are your projections for the rest of this year?
Absolutely. And Rich, when I think about my brother's comments, the first thing that comes to mind is everybody in the audience, please pay attention, because I believe my comments will be much more intelligent and well thought out, perhaps, than my brother put forth. Just a little sibling rivalry dig right there. But no, yes, the device market, again, I am very bullish on double-digit growth in 2022. And I'm confident that will occur relative to even maybe some more of the MPD or IDC forecast, because I do believe when people think about the technology that they're using, it needs to be best in class. So the time frame in which devices were sort of put, out to pasture had really gone on far too long, in my opinion. Maybe it was stretching to like a 5-year time horizon where people still had Windows 7 PCs, and we're at the end of life of Windows 10 and moving to Windows 11. And same thing on the Google side with the EDU devices and Google Enterprise devices, that we want people to be utilizing the best in class technology. I think there's no skimping anymore on what your device can accomplish, because thinking about the utilization, again, the processing power, the video power, the screen, everything about it, the storage, it needs to be state of the art with Wi-Fi 6 and security and USB-C and long battery life and all the things that, for example, Intel puts into their Evo platform. So I think the manufacturers recognize that the opportunity that we are going to put forth the best devices that have ever come to market. Again, in my entirety of a career, I've always seen new products introductions and roadmaps, but I've never been as excited as what I see coming here in this year. I think the metaverse and that whole concept of using augmented reality and virtual reality, again, will drive device consumption. So I am very bullish on double-digit growth for devices in this year. I would say the one segment that we sort of recognize that we probably got to a 1-to-1 device per student consumption model, where there was a huge proliferation of Chrome devices and Windows devices deployed in the education market over the last 2 years. That more likely than not is going to transform into a replacement market and an upgrade market. But as far as B2B and PC and B2C consumption devices of computers, I'm all in.
So the cloud has the ability to kind of impact technologies and roadmaps, and it's interesting. On one hand, we're saying we see a lot of potential for growth in terms of what you would say is best of class PCs, but what about some of the efforts by companies like Microsoft to put desktops in the cloud? Does that maybe affect what we might see the numbers pan out to over the next couple of years, or do you not see that as a major threat to the PC market right now?
So it's great conversation, because the cloud has actually never been more relevant than it had become during the pandemic. And I believe that, crisis that we all, lived through accelerated cloud deployment. So the cloud is something that we embrace, that our resellers, MSPs embrace. And in reality, I envision a world in which the hybrid environment becomes most attractive, particularly in the SMB market. So when you think about modern solutions, which is how we define what the future looks like, first and foremost, we understand that to be a multi-vendor solution. So it's not any one particular manufacturer or software provider that can solve all needs, that it will be a multi-vendor, that you need technical specialists to support that new business practice. And when you think about applications, there are some like Office 365 that very much live in the cloud and create a great user experience. But again, the devices themselves enable the fact that we can have these applications in the cloud and make it more sort of sequentially valuable to the end user from the reseller perspective. So is on-premise as we knew it, for years and years and years going to be the ultimate outcome? I don't think so. Is a full cloud transformation where everything that we do exists in the cloud? Is that where we're going to end up? I think that's perhaps swinging the pendulum a little bit too far. So I personally am in this hybrid environment where we are going to take hardware, we're going to have storage, we're going to have backup, we're going to use cloud solutions, we're going to bundle that with professional services and managed services. And ultimately, I think the reseller becomes that much more important in their value in the end user's mind and their perspective, because now they are creating a solution that's cost effective, that maybe has different cash flow mechanisms where they can do as a service, which could be a whole other podcast as we talk about, device as a service and how the different consumption models might look like. But sitting here today, I don't see what we do in terms of devices anyway evaporating with the cloud gaining in strength. So to me, it's a much more cohesive strategy for the manufacturers, ourselves again, and the resellers.
You talk cloud with our audience right now, and I'm sure, as you know, a lot of them are adjusting to Microsoft's new commerce experience and some of the implications of that for licensing Microsoft Cloud solutions. And you folks do a lot of Microsoft Cloud. Give us like a distributor's point of view on what you're hearing from the partners, what maybe they're struggling with, or what they think about NCE, and what you're kind of doing to work through that transition with them.
Absolutely. And, Rich, this is not the first time we've seen transformative business models. And I think anytime change is introduced in a way, I think it's just human nature. We sort of gravitate to, what's problematic about that change. It might be, personally, if we're, moving cities, we look at, well, what's the traffic like in the new city? What's the cost of living? What are the schools like for our children? You just focus on what perhaps could go wrong. And I think inevitably, as Microsoft rolled out the NCE program, first and foremost, whether you were a distributor or reseller, you looked at that and said, all right, well, what are they, someone's moved my cheese, what does that mean? How does the pricing work? What's my risk profile in this endeavor? And I think that's what became primarily top of mind. But I think over time, as we become more engaged in what the new model and format is, it becomes less overall problematic. I think the biggest challenge that we heard, the feedback we heard, which I think was raised in a number of conversations universally with Microsoft, is if an end user were to cancel a year or multi-year subscription, what happens? That the reseller and distributor in the economic food chain have some responsibility there that perhaps we didn't in the past. So I think, again, it is a change. It's change isn't always comfortable, but I think it'll make us smarter, perhaps, about how we deploy technology, who we partner with, what the end user credit profile looks like, how we sort of tie in and become integrated into their business as a reseller. I'm speaking on their behalf, so that they have great visibility into the utilization and usage model of the Microsoft technology that would be consumed. So I think we should probably circle back on that in 6 months and sort of get a picture of what really did transpire. Because again, I think most people look at this and say, oh my gosh, all this is changing. There's some negativity to it. But my sense is Microsoft has always been centric to supporting the channel. They have not wavered on that, and I don't expect them to waver on that.
Okay, so cloud computing, security, hardware, Pro AV, unified communications. We've talked about some big, important market opportunities. Did we miss anything? But are there any other kind of lesser appreciated opportunities, maybe even emerging ones in 2022 that folks in our audience should be thinking about?
Well, I think two things that the audience should be thinking about is, number one, how does their end user, think about how they want to consume technology? I think that's important conversation to have, particularly when I'm a baby boomer, and you think about the generations that have come after me, and you think about, if they're born in the cloud, type thought process, that everything they've done, from high school to college to now they're in the workforce, and their decision-making process perhaps leads with cloud in a monthly recurring revenue model. So I think understanding the consumption of technology and what the billing process looks like, and making sure that you've got a transactional model to support that through a cloud marketplace is an important aspect for anyone to think about from a business perspective. I would also, have everyone think about what it is from a delivery practice that they want to enhance in their business. So is it more services? Is it more configuration? Is it more advanced platforms? Do they want to have greater expertise in security, whether that's on-premise or using cloud security? I think those are all relevant conversations to have for your audience, because I do think inevitably in every end user, no matter what vertical market they are in, those sort of core, broad, centered conversations need to happen. I would say the best thing that I would recommend everybody take advantage of is using organizations like D&H to be the conduit of information from the manufacturers. I always found that the manufacturers have great marketing tools and great information flow on their evolution of their technology and roadmaps, but it is overwhelming, quite frankly, when you're trying to digest all that. So to the extent that we can consume that and put that in a easy to digest portal that we make available through our sales organization, through our marketing teams on our website, that access to industry leaders and best practices development from a business operations and a technology roadmap standpoint, leadership training. These are all things that I think become so important. So it's not just about selling technology in the future state, 2022 and beyond. I think it's about sort of business operation and best practices. And if we can help everyone succeed in that, I'm all in.
We had Frank Vitagliano from the GTDC on the podcast last week, and I asked him about supply chain and what the outlook is on that. That was something I spoke about with your brother Dan as well once upon a time. I'm going to skip over that topic because I don't think anyone at this point can make a concrete. But I'll ask you about something else that's much in the news right now, and I'm curious to get your thoughts on this. This was something else I asked Dan about last month. Inflation is in the headlines a lot right now. So how is that impacting the?
So it's such an interesting topic because you do have inflationary pressures that are quite obvious. So in our personal lives, for the average family, it's about $275 a month that they're spending more on just basic necessities, rent, food, and transportation. So that does take a bite out of the consumer budget. Inflation has permeated our industry in so many ways that when you think about raw materials going up, what's going on across the globe in terms of disruptions to supply chains have impacted that. So when you think about all the freight costs, and it's not only ocean freight, it's trucking and transportation through rail, all those costs have gone up. And then you think about the labor cost. So at the manufacturer level, you've got labor cost increases around the globe. In wholesale distribution, at the D&H level, we've got labor costs in our distribution centers going up. And then everything around us, when you think about FedEx and UPS, and you think about insurance costs, you really can't look anywhere, that's sort of relevant in a B2B environment, and you don't see increasing costs. So what does that mean? I think the Fed will raise interest rates along their meetings here through the balance of 2022, but I'm not sure that dissipates the type of inflation that we're seeing today. That in fact might slow down some of the expectations of inflation, which does play a role. But I do think this whole, back to your original question about supply demand clearly has played a role in inflation. So if the forecast would be that supply and demand level out, I do think that instead of perhaps overall like 7% inflation in our segment of the industry, that does moderate more down to a more realistic lower inflation level. And so far, the goodness has been that because the technology products are, again, so pervasive in everything we do, that we haven't hit price points that the supply demand has gone out of balance where the end users just say enough, I can't afford it. I think they recognize the fact that if they're going to be in business, they need security, they need best-in-class technology products, they need cloud solutions, all of that. So that cost is sort of built into their business model. The risk becomes if we sort of outprice ourselves in the marketplace and all of a sudden people start to hold on to legacy products because in fact they no longer can afford the best-in-class technology products brought to market. So I think that's our bigger risk, that inflation continues and arises to an inflection point where the price elasticity does us a disfavor. And I don't think we're there yet. It's sort of like everybody can wrap their minds around the fact that in today's environment, things cost more and we're going to pay more for better technology. Historically, we're always used to technology products going down, literally from everything from a large screen TV to a notebook computer. If you waited 3 months, 6 months after introduction, you would see a price decline. I'm not sure you're going to see that today. So I'm optimistic that we've got hit a critical point in time where, again, technology is what we live and breathe by, and we're going to continue to see good, strong results. I'd hate to see the pricing pressures continue in an upward trajectory.
Yeah, let's take a second to talk about just distribution's role in 2022. Obviously, being partners with a distributor like D&H in 2020 and 2021 was critical to get through everything. If anything, for financing reasons, but also just for inventory, as inventory is very, very difficult to get. Does distribution's role in 2022 is it the same as it has been in the past, or do you see your role expanding with the channel as they go forward?
It is interesting where over, again, my 3 decades, I've seen the role of distribution migrate, and certain values rise to the top of the conversation. It's not to say that the other values don't go away, like our basic pick, pack, and ship operations and all the goodness that comes with having availability, just in time when the reseller needs that for end user solutions. Obviously, is core to what we do. But I think the value is changing. So one of the things that we've identified that was extremely important during the COVID pandemic and continues beyond, perhaps even stronger, is the working capital needs of our reselling community. Is that as interest rates will rise, that the cost of floating receivables on their behalf, the cost of carrying inventory goes up. That if we can provide increased downstream credit, we can be the back office fulfillment operations for them. So we're not touching the materials twice. We can do more configurations for them and add services at a very cost-effective way. Then I think, again, distribution's value and role has migrated to probably the next evolution of what we do. Back to that whole modern solutions, because it is not a single purpose device any longer from a single manufacturer. And we've got the culmination of all these technologies that come together. Education, again, rises to the top of the conversation of the value that distribution brings. So I think, again, that we recognize how it is that we help our resellers succeed. If we can do that well, that circles back and helps us. And if we do well, obviously the manufacturers, reap the benefits of selling more products into the channel. So that, I'll go back to that word ecosystem. I've never been more sort of proud of how the ecosystem thrived during the pandemic. It's sort of the silver lining of everything that transpired that was negative. And again, I think that continues as we move forward.
Yeah, you said these are the words help resellers succeed. And one of the things that I find very fascinating about distributors is that they do so many things, right? There's so many services that D&H in particular offers. What are some of the name three things D&H offers or services you provide that resellers don't take advantage of enough or don't leverage enough?
Yeah, that is a great conversation point, Matt, because some of our what I would consider like best kept secrets are readily available at no charge to the reseller community. So technical specialists, so we have people on staff that are well-trained, well-certified. It might be in Cisco solutions or HPE solutions or Microsoft solutions or Google solutions. The entire information platform becomes something that could be so convoluted and so complicated, and we can streamline that and get answers to the community in such a more efficient way. So our technical specialists, if the audience is not taking advantage of those individuals, I would urge them to do so. The second area, I would cycle back to education and that ability to leverage our resources to build new business practices. That never would we want a reseller to think they need to do that on their own. That we have great experience and can help structure, a strategy by which if a reseller sees an opportunity, and we talked about Pro AV and unified communications might be a great one. How do they get involved? Where do they start? How do they build a collaboration practice? Inevitably, I think that is critical. So the technical specialists, the education specialists, and then I would say this advanced platforms and back to the modern solutions, that if literally they've been transacting business in one way, and it's very hard, I think, to get your arms around what does this new business model look like? How do we take the hardware business, which we know and embrace and love, and it's paid the bills for so many years, and tack on cloud solutions and make that part of our go-to-market strategy and, again, increase our stickiness with our end user population. Home run, come to D&H. We've got a huge resource in place. And it's not just, cloud as we think about, again, just, Microsoft perhaps is the first one that comes to mind, but there is a series of combination hardware and cloud solutions that are being brought to the market by some of the existing providers and new providers each and every day and week. So those are three things that I would call out.
Excellent. And a good three things to call out for sure. I guess we're just about out of time, but I think maybe to wrap this up, one thing that I think would be really good to know and a good setup for a future interview with you and hopefully your brother at the same time, because I think that could be fun. Tell us three other ways that you are superior to your brother. Well, it's often been said that, Dan has a face for radio. So the fact that this is a video podcast, I'm glad you made the proper choice, and we had a chance to chat today and tell you more about D&H and our strategies. In terms of my brother, I don't want to discount the value he really does bring to D&H. I mean, from a sales and marketing mindset, I would give him a check plus
that he really, again, has been in the business a very long time and, embraces what we do day in and day out and, helps facilitate success and drives the business forward. In terms of other aspects of our, mutual rivalry, he does hit the drive. He can drive the golf ball farther than me. I will give him that. But I think about getting, the putts in the hole. Again, I'd have to give myself kudos for my success in and around the green relative to the tee box. And again, other than that, it's hard to say what that last item is, that third item, but perhaps we'll save that for the next conversation we have, Matt, and we can enlighten your audience about what that might look like. But for all the kidding we do between Dan and myself, we really do love working together and been great success over the couple decades we've been at this.
Well, fantastic, and we look forward to that discussion as well, and for hopefully a future interview where we can pit the two of you together, mano a mano, and just see
maybe
what happens.
We could get in the boxing ring. There's all sorts of things that we could be creative and come up with.
I love it. Rich and I will work on that. Michael Schwab, co-president, D&H Distributing. I want to thank you so much for coming on and talking with us. It's been very enlightening. Lots of really good things to think about, and lots of good opportunities, and some good advice on how to better take advantage of a distributor as well. Lots of services that you guys can provide. As far as D&H specifically, if anybody wants to get in touch with you, learn more about D&H, learn how to partner with you, where can they go? How can they do that?
I think the easiest way is, www.dnh.com and dnh.ca. There's a ton of information. We love that we still have dedicated sales resources, and they're all domestic. We're not offshoring anything. So we want to support the community as best we can. And please go to the website. Someone will turn around and reach right back out to you.
Fantastic. Well, thank you again so much for being on. It was a pleasure, and hopefully we will get you back down the road. With that, we are going to take a short break. When we come back, Luis Alvarez from Alvarez Technology Group should be with us on the other side. We'll close out the show with a little bit of discussion, a little bit of fun, and a little bit of good stuff there. So stick around for that. We will be right back. And we're back now with part 3 of ChannelProWeekly. Really, really good interview. Luis, I'm sure you'll catch that interview once the show goes. Definitely worth listening to and watching. Rich, any particular takeaways you want to highlight for Mr. Alvarez and our listening and viewing audience?
Well, I'll just bring up what I brought up off the air after the interview when we were talking to Michael, which is, I was listening to him talk about inflation and its implications for the IT market. And I was thinking to myself, this guy studied economics once upon a time, because that was a really astute kind of breakdown, and he got the jargon right and so on. And sure enough, this is I believe, if I remember right, Matt, he kind of told us it's sort of a hobby almost. And so that was readily apparent that he knows his econ.
Yeah, and some people play basketball, some people farm lettuce at a co-op. He studies economics as a hobby. We need to help him find a different hobby, I think. But it was a good one, and it's we learned a lot. About price elasticity. So no, good. So it was a really great interview. I hope everybody checked it out and enjoyed it. And we'll go and check out some of the other cool things that D&H is doing to help their partners. So Rich, unfortunately, I know we're kind of coming up to a hard time stop for you, and I'm really bummed because I always like to have a little fun with Luis when he's on the show, but we are going to have to skip any games today because we couldn't think of one fast enough that would be quick to do. So I guess we're just going to have to say our goodbyes. But Luis, thank you so much for being on with us and being part of the show. For those who want to learn more about you, learn more about Alvarez Technology Group, and some of the amazing work that you guys are doing, for leading work. That's a word. For leading is a word today. Just the kind of things that you're doing is just really incredible. Where can they learn more about that and talk to you?
Well, you can visit our website at alvareztg.com. And we're also on Facebook, Instagram. I don't know what we do on Instagram because I'm not on Instagram. LinkedIn, and you can follow me on LinkedIn at Luis M. Alvarez and see all the good things and fun things that I'm getting involved in.
Very cool. And I really encourage people to do that. Go and check his stuff out. It is pretty amazing. Are you speaking at any shows? You said you were starting to get out and about. Are you doing any speaker roles?
Yeah, I'm doing the show next week. I'm doing an event, a panel at the event that will be talking about the after effects of the Kaseya hack and what that meant. We're going to have a couple of guys that were actually impacted by it and telling their stories. And then I'm going to be in Fort Lauderdale in June at the Canatech Expo, which is a cannabis technology expo. It's part of IT Expo that they do there, on several panels talking about all things technology in the cannabis industry.
Awesome. And I know the Channel Pro SMB Forum is headed to LA later in the year, right, Rich? When is that?
I believe that's in November.
So good chance we will probably be able to convince Mr. Alvarez to stop by the Channel Pro SMB Forum in November, where you can meet him there in person. So check that out. Go to events.channelpronetwork.com. Rich, people might have missed some stuff. Even you may have missed some stuff since you're kind of out laying on the beach while you're working there in sunny Cancun. What have people missed, and what might people see next week?
Well, you know what, folks, if you missed things like me, even if you haven't been hanging out on the beach, a great thing to do every Friday is go to ChannelProNetwork.com, look for our weekly In Case You Missed It post by our own James Gaskin. This week, James is going to be talking about an extreme new NUC from Intel. Extreme is in the name, just came out today, as a matter of fact. Talking about multi-cloud as we were before, Microsoft has extended the capabilities of its Defender security tool to the Google cloud platform, which is interesting. They can now cover their own stuff, AWS and Google, through Defender, which is very interesting. New ultra-portable laptop from Acer, a new high-capacity ink tank printer specifically for small businesses from HP. And James came across a story about a toddler who, as far as we can tell, is going to have a punk rock haircut for the rest of his life. James will explain that to you if that doesn't make much sense. In terms of what's coming up next week is Mobile World Congress in Barcelona. They're going to be doing it face-to-face for the first time in a while. And so there's going to be a ton of mobility and mobile device and mobile services news. I'm sure that we're going to be talking about next week. And then beyond that, I can just tell you there's some BDR news coming. There's some security news coming that we'll probably wind up talking about in the show, but that's about as much as I could say.
Very cool. Sounds like stuff to look at. Ooh, and then the NUC thing you're talking about. I'm a big NUC fan, so I had to look and see what they were doing there. It looks pretty cool. It's not your traditional 4x4. It's a little bit bigger than that, but it looks really neat. So check that out, folks. Go to the In Case You Missed It post this Friday and see what it's all about. And with that, that is going to wrap up episode 216. Big thanks to Luis Alvarez for stopping on and joining. And what else should you do, folks? ChannelProNetwork.com is the website you should go to each and every day. Make it your homepage. There you'll find articles, downloads, resources, white papers, news, all kinds of stuff to help keep you on top of what's going on in the industry and to help your business grow and make more money. All good things you want to do. Please subscribe to Channel Pro Weekly. Anywhere podcasts are found, we're on all of them, the Apples, the Googles, the Spotifys, all that stuff. Leave a comment and a good rating. That always helps. If you're on YouTube, hit the like button and subscribe there, hit the bell, and join us and watch us there as well. It goes a long way. Thank you for doing that. Got any suggestions? Want to talk to us? Podcast at channelpronetwork.com is the email address. You can reach out to us there. Follow us on all the socials. We're pretty easy to find. And stay tuned because we'll be back next week with episode 217. See you then.